expert on the salary cap, an instructor for the Sports Business Classroom. They have a great immersive program that you can be a part of in Las Vegas coming up this summer. We'll talk about that in a bit. Eric, we have not chatted since the holidays. How are you, my man?
Oh, doing really well, enjoying the playoffs, and happy to be on.
And a lot to discuss. So let's start with what happened last night in Philadelphia. We know what Joel Embiid can do when fully healthy, another double-double last night. But how does his return and his ability to be on the floor and in the paint change everything for his teammates?
Well, I mean, we could talk about who should be the league MVP, but, I mean, Embiid is so important to the Sixers team. I mean, he is a massive part. I mean, this is how the team has been built. James Harden has been added to this core, but this is a Joel Embiid team. And so there's no one on that roster without that can anywhere approximate what he does. But in addition to his scoring, he's a big presence inside defensively. It's a much more difficult game for Bam Adebayo when you're playing against Joel Embiid than, say, DeAndre Jordan. I mean, it's no comparison. So, the Heat have a series on their hands with Joel Embiid. Without it, it's a no contest.
Eric, so much discussion about the state of James Harden's game, and he looked like he had aged rapidly, couldn't buy a bucket prior to the explosion last night, going off for 31 points. So where is Harden's game at right now? Who's the real Harden, the one we've seen for the majority of the playoffs, or the one who showed up last night?
Well, I mean, like I said, this team is really built around the center, so it's not what James had in Houston, where that team was a bunch of shooters and switchable defenders. They were never great defensively, but they fit how he played. But what the Miami Heat, they're grimy, they're tough, and they're putting everything they have against Harden when Embiid isn't on the floor, right? When he was out of the game, when he was hurt, there was nothing that Harden could do because the entire Miami Heat defense, and they've been elite for years, was focused on him. Now it's a little bit more balanced, and he's been finding his game. He's not exactly the same guy he was a few years back. He had the hamstring problem. I think he's still one of the best players in the league. I don't know if he's top 10 or top 5. He doesn't feel like top 5 anymore. Feels closer to, slip into 10, 11, 12. But, I mean, come on, it still means you're one of the best players in the world. So I think James will be fine if this team is fully at full strength. I think this is a much more viable team. I still think James Harden has a lot to give.
I'm Brian Weber, in for Jim Rome on CBS Sports Radio, talking NBA with Eric Pincus, a Bleacher Report. Suns and Mavs now tied at 2. Chris Paul had way too many turnovers in Game 3. Yesterday, the worst performance in his postseason career, more fouls than points. What do you make of where Paul is in this series moving forward?
Well, I thought, Game 3, Dallas is, they're a really talented team. Luka Doncic is really special. And I thought that Game 3, just the emotion of it, I thought, Phoenix is a better team. But going back home, I thought that Dallas would get that game. I didn't expect Game 4, and the calls didn't go Chris's way. He seemed to let it get into his head a little bit. I don't have an answer for it. I still think that Chris Paul has been one of the best players of the playoffs. He's been stupendous. It just the last couple of games have been kind of a disaster. So I just expect a rebound game. I think Phoenix is better than Dallas, and I'm impressed. I'm impressed by what the Mavericks have done. If Dorian Finney-Smith is going to shoot like that, they're going to be able to win games in the playoffs. But I just don't think that they're going to be able to get this series.
That's an awfully big if. Let's shift our attention to the games coming up. So, reigning champs in Milwaukee, taking on Boston, who was the best team by far down the stretch. Are you surprised at all that the Bucks have been able to win 2 of the first 3 games, even without Chris Middleton? Certainly helped that Jason Tatum disappeared in a major way over the weekend.
Well, I mean, the Bucks are the champs, right? They're the reigning champs. So I think Middleton's an important part of that. But I don't think he's close to the MVP of this team. I mean, that's Giannis. And they've done a really good job of just adding depth. And over the years, they've developed a specific way of playing. You've got Drew Holiday and Chris, and obviously not Chris right now, but it's a a team where the role players are, quote, stars, like they're paid like stars, Middleton and Drew, but really it's a bunch of role players and Giannis. And that's not to denigrate what the other guys do, but it's just a great team across the board. The Celtics have been great in the playoffs. I've been really impressed with what they've done. I've been impressed with their second half of the season. I don't think this series is written. I don't think it's done. I think this is going to I think it's going to stay competitive. I would love to see 6-7 games. I'm not pulling for a team specifically, but I think this is one of the more exciting series to watch.
Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report is our guest on CBS Sports Radio. Before we get into the particulars of what could occur between the Warriors and the Grizzlies tonight, and so much of that hinges on the availability of Ja Morant, officially doubtful. We'll find out if he can give it a go with the knee injury. Do you think Jordan Poole's move that injured Ja, if you think it happened there, certainly there was contact, do you think what Jordan Poole did was dirty at all?
That's the toughest question you'll ask, because I mean I don't know the answer. I legit don't. It made no sense. It was one of those moves in real time that I think he was swiping for the ball and got the knee, but he also had like his hand on the hip. It was just an uncomfortable thing. The NBA is not really pursuing it. They're basically letting it lie as just kind of incidental contact. I don't know the answer, and I don't get it. I mean, it just has to have been a mistake. I don't think that could have hurt him. I saw him land really awkwardly. That felt like where the injury was. I don't think that you're going to get hurt by that kind of stretch, that kind of push. I don't think it's enough to cause an injury. To me, that's kind of how a doctor would examine them. But I've also seen some doctors say it's unnatural. It's one of those things that's just, it's just going to have to go down as an unanswerable question.
Wow. A conundrum, a puzzle within a riddle. I guess the question is, how do you interpret intent? We'll never know. We know the result. We know Ja's been banged up because he's got the slight frame, and we know Memphis had a winning record without him, but this is a vastly different situation playing on the road in San Francisco, and the Warriors couldn't miss on Saturday night. If Ja doesn't play tonight, you give Memphis any shot? I mean,
they've been tremendous all year without Ja, but this is the playoffs, and I think the bigger issue is Desmond Bane's clearly dealing with some sort of, I think it's a back injury where he's just not quite himself. He's been the driver of this team as far as the scoring, the spacing. He's been one of the best players coming into the league in the last few years as far as unheralded. He's not like a lottery top player. The expectation was he'd be a good role player. No one, I don't think, expected him to be quite this good. And I think the fact that he doesn't seem able to be himself is probably a bad sign for the Warriors.
Finally, Eric, as I mentioned, you have a role as an instructor for Sports Business Classroom. Great program coming up in July in Las Vegas. What are the details?
Well, we have a program in Las Vegas at the gym. You're actually at Summer League. You're in the building in rooms with executives, and you're learning from people who actually do the jobs. And really what the treasure of it is that we have great success helping people get started in the business of basketball, get jobs with teams. And we've got guys with the Nets. We have two actual GMs of G League teams. We have people with Boston, with the Clippers. It goes across the board. And so that's really the love of it for us as instructors is if you're looking to break into the business of basketball, this is really your best way to get there.
Awesome. Coming up in July. Eric, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on CBS Sports Radio.